Have you ever met someone and judged them in a single moment, only to discover later that they could change your entire life? What if the person you thought was ordinary turned out to hold the power to make, or break, your future? And what if a simple $3 birthday cake became the reason two broken hearts found hope again? Before we begin, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that kindness has a way of returning when we least expect it. Now settle in, because this story may change the way you look at people forever. The rain had been falling since dawn. Not the dramatic kind that crashes against windows and announces its arrival. This rain was quieter. Steady. Persistent. The kind that seemed determined to soak through every layer of hope a person had left. 34-year-old Ethan Carter stood outside a small neighborhood bakery with his hands shoved into the pockets of a worn jacket. His shoulders sagged beneath a weight that had nothing to do with the weather. In one hand, he carried a folded piece of paper. It was covered in notes, sketches, calculations, and dreams. Dreams that had just been crushed. 3 hours earlier, Ethan had walked out of the tallest office building in the city after receiving the worst news of his professional life. The project he'd spent 4 years developing had been rejected. Not delayed. Not revised. Rejected. Completely. $10 million in funding gone. Years of sacrifice gone. Hundreds of sleepless nights gone. The company responsible for the decision was Morrison Dynamics, one of the largest technology investment firms in the country. And the final rejection had come directly from the CEO herself. A woman Ethan had never even met. A woman whose signature now sat at the bottom of the email that had shattered his future. Victoria Morrison. He stared through the bakery window. Inside, children laughed. Parents smiled. The smell of warm bread drifted through the air whenever the door opened. It felt like a different universe. One that didn't include overdue bills. One that didn't include loan payments. One that didn't include wondering whether his startup would survive another month. Ethan? A small voice interrupted his thoughts. He turned. His 7-year-old daughter Lily stood beneath a bright yellow umbrella. Her dark hair peeked out from beneath a pink hood. Despite the rain, she was smiling. She always smiled. Even when life gave her reasons not to. "Daddy, are we getting the cake?" Ethan forced a smile. "Of course we are." Today was Lily's birthday. 7 years old. 7 years since the day she entered his life and gave it purpose. 7 years since the day he promised he would always take care of her. And 7 years since losing his wife, Emma, during childbirth. Some wounds never completely healed. This was one of them. Lily wrapped her tiny hand around his. "Can I choose?" "You always choose." She grinned. Then together they walked into the bakery. The warmth hit them immediately. Fresh pastries lined the shelves. Customers chatted over coffee. The scent of vanilla filled the air. For a brief moment, Ethan forgot about rejection letters and financial disasters. For a brief moment, he was just a father buying his daughter a birthday cake. The display case glittered with colorful creations. Chocolate cakes. Strawberry cakes. Vanilla cakes decorated with flowers. Lily pressed her face against the glass. "They all look amazing." Ethan checked his wallet. $23. That was everything he had until Friday. His stomach tightened. Most of the cakes cost $25 to $40. Too much. Far too much. Then Lily pointed toward the smallest cake in the corner. It wasn't fancy. Just a simple round cake with white frosting and a few colorful sprinkles. "Daddy, that one." Ethan glanced at the price tag. $3. Relief washed over him. Good choice. The cashier packaged the cake carefully. As Ethan reached for his wallet, he noticed a woman standing near the coffee counter. She looked to be in her early 40s. Elegant but understated. Dark blue coat. Simple hairstyle. No jewelry except a silver watch. She sat alone with a notebook open beside her coffee. There was something familiar about her face. But Ethan couldn't place it. The woman looked up briefly. Their eyes met for only a second. Then she returned to writing. Ethan paid for the cake. $3. The smallest birthday cake in the bakery. Normally he would have felt embarrassed. Today he was simply grateful. Lily hugged the box as though it contained treasure. To her, it did. As they turned to leave, Lily suddenly stopped. "Daddy. What is it?" The lady looked sad. Children notice things adults missed. Ethan glanced toward the woman. She was staring out the window now. Her expression carried a loneliness that seemed strangely familiar. Before Ethan could respond, Lily walked over. "Daddy," he whispered urgently. But it was too late. Lily had already reached the table. The woman looked surprised. "Hello." Lily smiled. "It's my birthday." The woman's expression softened instantly. "Is it?" "Yes." "Happy birthday." "Thank you." The woman reached into her purse. Then paused. Instead, she simply smiled. "What did you get?" "A cake." Lily proudly held up the box. The woman laughed softly. "Wonderful." Then Lily asked a question that caught everyone off guard. "Why are you sad?" The bakery became strangely quiet. Even Ethan froze. Children often asked questions adults avoided. For a moment the woman seemed unable to answer. Then she smiled gently. "Maybe because I forgot how to celebrate birthdays." Lily considered this carefully. Then she opened the cake box. A tiny slice of white frosting peeked out. "You can share mine." The woman blinked. Something changed in her eyes. Something emotional. Something vulnerable. Ethan stepped forward. "I'm sorry." "She's very friendly." "No," the woman said softly. "Don't apologize." Her voice sounded different now. Warmer. Almost grateful. Lily smiled. "You should come." The woman laughed. "I don't think your father would appreciate a stranger showing up." Lily looked at Ethan. "Can she?" Ethan nearly choked. The woman smiled again. For the first time, genuine happiness reached her eyes. "It's okay." Then she looked directly at Ethan. "You have a wonderful daughter." "Thank you." The woman nodded thoughtfully. "You're a lucky man." Ethan almost said no. Lucky men didn't lose their wives. Lucky men didn't watch investors walk away. Lucky men didn't buy $3 birthday cakes because they couldn't afford anything else. But then he looked at Lily. Maybe he was lucky after all. What neither Ethan nor Lily knew was that the woman sitting in front of them was Victoria Morrison, CEO of Morrison Dynamics. The same woman who had rejected Ethan's $10 million project only hours earlier. And she had just witnessed something she would never forget. A struggling father spending his last few dollars to make his daughter smile. A little girl willing to share her birthday cake with a complete stranger. And a kind of love that no business report could measure. Victoria watched them leave through the rain. The small cake box tucked carefully beneath Lily's arm. The father holding the umbrella over his daughter instead of himself. Neither of them noticed they were getting soaked. Victoria stared at the door long after it closed. Then she slowly reached for her phone. She opened a file. One she had reviewed that morning. Project Horizon. Founder, Ethan Carter. Status, rejected. Her finger hovered over the screen. For reasons she couldn't explain, she suddenly wanted another look. And that decision would change all three of their lives forever. To be continued. Hashtag the CEO mocked the welder repairing her billion-dollar ship, until she learned he designed it. Before we begin, take 1 second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that true greatness often hides behind ordinary appearances. And trust me, you'll want to stay until the very end, because the final revelation changes everything. The enormous luxury vessel floated silently in the harbor, gleaming under the morning sky like a floating city of steel and glass. Reporters called it the most advanced private ship ever built. Investors called it a masterpiece of engineering. Industry magazines called it the future of maritime transportation. Its name was the Horizon Crown. Valued at nearly $1 billion, it represented the pride of the powerful shipping corporation led by 38-year-old CEO Victoria Harrington. Victoria had spent years building her reputation as one of the youngest and most successful executives in the maritime industry. Intelligent, ambitious, and relentlessly competitive, she had transformed her father's struggling company into a global powerhouse. People admired her. People feared her. But very few people truly knew her. On that particular morning, Victoria arrived at the harbor expecting applause. Instead, she found chaos. Engineers rushed across the deck. Technicians argued beside open control panels. Crew members exchanged worried glances. Something was terribly wrong. The Horizon Crown, scheduled to begin its highly publicized maiden voyage in less than 24 hours, had suffered a catastrophic systems failure. Without warning, several critical propulsion systems had stopped responding. Backup systems refused to synchronize. Navigation modules displayed conflicting information. No one could identify the source of the problem. The launch ceremony was scheduled for the next day. International investors were already arriving. Journalists were preparing broadcasts. Millions of dollars were at stake. Victoria felt her stomach tighten. "Fix it," she ordered. The chief engineer looked exhausted. "We're trying. Trying isn't good enough. We've had 20 specialists working all night. And? No solution yet." Victoria's jaw clenched. Failure wasn't acceptable. Not now. Not after everything she'd invested. As the morning progressed, more experts arrived. Software specialists. Mechanical engineers. Consultants from overseas. Hours passed. Nothing worked. The atmosphere grew heavier with every failed attempt. Then something unexpected happened. An elderly harbor maintenance supervisor approached the engineering team. "There's someone you should call." The chief engineer frowned. "Who?" "A welder." The room fell silent. Several engineers laughed. "A welder?" The supervisor nodded. "He works at Dock 12. One consultant rolled his eyes. "We have doctoral-level engineers here." The supervisor remained calm. "I'm aware. And you think a welder can solve a problem they can't?" "I didn't say that." "Then what are you saying?" The old supervisor looked directly at the disabled vessel. "I'm saying he's the smartest man I've ever met." Victoria had already lost patience. "We don't have time for fairy tales." The supervisor didn't react. "Call him." "No." The supervisor paused. Then he quietly added, "If you don't, this ship won't leave the harbor tomorrow." Something about the certainty in his voice caused several people to exchange glances. Finally, the chief engineer sighed. "What do we have to lose?" 2 hours later, a dusty pickup truck rolled into the harbor. The vehicle looked completely out of place among luxury cars and executive transportation. A man stepped out. He appeared to be in his early 60s. His work clothes showed signs of years of labor. Welding gloves hung from his belt. His boots carried traces of metal dust. His gray hair was slightly unkempt. His name was Daniel Carter. And nobody paid much attention to him. At first. Victoria looked him up and down. Disappointment immediately crossed her face. This was the miracle solution. This man? A welder? She had expected someone impressive. Someone important. Someone with credentials. Not a laborer. Daniel quietly approached the vessel. His eyes moved across the hull. Then the deck. Then the propulsion housing. He didn't say much. He simply observed. Victoria folded her arms. You understand this is a billion-dollar ship? Daniel nodded. I know. Her tone carried obvious skepticism. And you've worked on vessels like this before? He smiled slightly. A few. Several engineers exchanged amused looks. One whispered to another. This should be entertaining. Victoria heard it and smirked. For nearly 20 minutes Daniel walked around the vessel. He examined areas everyone else had ignored. He touched structural panels. Listened to machinery. Studied vibration patterns. Occasionally he asked short questions. Most people barely paid attention. Then he stopped. His expression changed. The smile disappeared. He looked concerned. Very concerned. The chief engineer noticed. What is it? Daniel pointed toward a section beneath the propulsion housing. Who authorized that modification? The engineer blinked. What modification? That one. The engineer stared. There isn't a modification. Daniel shook his head. Yes, there is. Several engineers gathered. Daniel pointed toward a reinforced support structure. This wasn't part of the original design. The chief engineer frowned. How would you know that? Daniel looked at him. For a moment he said nothing. Then he quietly replied. Because whoever changed it misunderstood the load distribution calculations. The engineer laughed. You're guessing. No. You haven't seen the schematics. Daniel's eyes remained fixed on the structure. I don't need to. Victoria stepped forward. And how exactly would a welder know that? Daniel turned toward her. His answer was calm. Because experience had taught him never to argue with people determined to underestimate him. Because I designed the original system. Silence. Nobody laughed. Nobody moved. Nobody even breathed. The harbor suddenly felt frozen. Victoria stared at him. Then she laughed. A short, dismissive laugh. That's impossible. Daniel simply looked at the ship. The chief engineer crossed his arms. You designed this vessel? Daniel nodded. Yes. The engineer shook his head. The Horizon Crown was designed by one of the most respected marine architects in history. That's true. So why would that be you? Daniel remained silent. Victoria smiled coldly. This should be interesting. What she didn't know. What none of them knew. Was that the man standing before them wasn't merely a welder. He was the forgotten genius whose ideas had revolutionized modern shipbuilding. A man whose name had once dominated engineering journals. A man who had sacrificed everything for principles few people understood. And before the day ended, Victoria Harrington would discover a truth capable of changing her life forever. Because the ship she proudly called her greatest achievement existed only because of him. And the story behind that truth was far more painful than anyone could imagine. To be continued.